Welcome back to another episode of Prime Time. I've got Nick beside me, Dad back on the bench. We had an absolutely packed week of sport. We started off interviewing some UFC fighters, went to the UFC on the weekend, we went to Penrith to watch the semi-final.
Don't forget about Collingwood, MCG, Thursday night.
That was probably the highlight for me because going to Penrith was great. Don't get me wrong, like the Penrith fans, they get there, they support their team. Whoever's the DJ there over at Penrith, they play bangers. When Nathan Cleary is scoring, they're celebrating, but nothing beats a packed house MCG. Like Collingwood fans are nuts.
Singing the anthem at the end of the game, nothing beats that. Other than seeing someone get brutally knocked out in the UFC. I thoroughly enjoy it. It's a really pet peeve of mine, but I like seeing people get knocked out.
Seeing that Strickland upset live was pretty unbelievable. We were there. We kind of backed him as well, I think, throughout the week because Adesanya comes across as a bit of a cringe kind of fighter, takes himself a little bit too seriously. Strickland was just happy to be there participating. The Aussie fans really got around him and he pulled off one of the biggest upsets in UFC history. So what a weekend. But we go straight into NRL and AFL Finals week 2. Let's kick off with the fan question like we do every week. Dad, what's the fan question?
Should Ryan Papenhuyzen retire?
No, definitely not. I mean, look, he's had a bad run of injuries. I think he's only played about maybe 15 games over the last 2 years, 3 this year.
Poor bastard.
2.5 actually, if you're really putting it down to the full stop. But really, why should he retire for? He's still young, only 25 years old. He's got so much football ahead of him. It wasn't a compound fracture, as was what was first thought.
Yeah.
So really, if he comes back before pre-season, which he's likely to do, he's got a full pre-season to build up his legs again, come back as a Storm number 1, and look at another 10 years on his career.
It was a best case scenario that he got 3 months on the sidelines. They reckon, I think NRL Physio was the first to jump on it. It was probably the best case scenario. They feared it was a compound fracture of his fibula, which Paul George has done. And it didn't look good. Everyone was shocked. Everyone was like, not again, this poor bastard. Like mentally, they would take a toll on you if you had to keep coming back from these long-term injuries. But it is the best case scenario. I just think he needs, something that's going to build his bone density up. Like, honestly, if I'm the NRL, I'm like, kid, just go away for 6 months, do around the steroids, do a cycle, do the Jared Mullen, and say, just build up some strength in your bones. Or, let's get Stephen Dank back into the NRL and just give him some fucking, what are they called? Peptides?
Peptides, HGH,
Give him the Paul Gallen peptides because the game is better with Pappenhausen in there. And I don't want to be like closing my eyes every time he takes a run, or if Craig Bellamy puts him back in the middle and scared that he's going to get an injury again, because he's a great player and we want to see him out there for long. So I don't think he should retire. It's not a long-term injury. He'll be back next season. He'll have a pre-season under his belt, but we just need to see him on the field. Do whatever you can to get back to your best.
I mean, NRL usually prohibits steroids because they're performance enhancing.
Yeah.
But when it's recovery enhancing, I think they should allow it. Why not? If he's going to be struggling throughout his recovery because he's had back-to-back injuries, is he really enhancing his performance on the field? No. He's just preparing his body to get back to what he was.
Do the NFL, do your drug testing behind closed doors. Let him do the Ray Lewis deer antler velvet. Strengthen your body back up, IGF-1. Do whatever you need to do, Ryan Papenhuyzen, to get back on the field. But thank God he's going to be all right and it's not as bad.
I mean, players have come back from worse. Tau Moga, 3 Ricos on his ACL.
Jordan Kahu, freak accident.
I mean, I didn't know if they took steroids or not. Maybe they did. Dad, maybe you know anyone that could help him out with some steroids. But, I mean, let him go. Let him take it.
Who was your team of the week last round?
Team of the week for me was the Panthers. Being there live, seeing how good they are against mediocre Warriors team, which I've said all season.
Yeah, they said there was like a New South Wales Cup origin. New South Wales Cup spine, sorry.
They beat them convincingly. Nathan Cleary was one of the best players on the field. They just never looked like losing. That was always a 13-plus game. 3-peat incoming.
Yeah, we got there. We saw, I think we put out on our story that it was going to be 13 plus. They just look too clinical at the moment. And yeah, I got to say, it was between them for me and Brisbane. Yeah, like we've been saying all year, Brisbane is the only team, they're my team of the week. They're the only team that can probably compete in attack with the Panthers, and they got the forwards to compete with them.
And a very underwhelming first 2 games for the NRL over the weekend. I just thought the Brisbane...
and that's supposed to be top 4.
Yeah, I know, exactly right. And look, New Zealand Warriors have overachieved, and it's showing. If they don't get Sean Johnson back this week,
you don't give them a chance?
Nah.
Well, I think the most entertaining 2 games were the ones in the bottom 8. The bottom half of the 8. And they were both almost extra time, settled by a field goal. So, again, I could have called out any of those teams, but that goes to my player of the round. I was tossing up between Nathan Cleary and Sam Walker. Sam Walker kicking that field goal after being really, I think, shunned by Trent Robinson and undeservedly dropped. I know it's probably only going to be a couple-week thing, but he got injured. really probably shattered his confidence. But to do that in a big stage, I thought he'd be my player of the week, but I'm going with Nathan Cleary. Nathan Cleary is the best halfback in the game. He's the face of the NRL at the moment. He was in attendance at the UFC, got a big crowd pop when they put him on at Kudos Bank Arena. And I just think he's too clinical. I think he's, when you talk about kangaroos, he's got to be there ahead of DCE. He's the best halfback in the comp. And I'm going to call it from now, he's going to be the Clive Churchill medalist because the amount of times he touches the ball for Penrith, he's the most impactful player on the field. If he's playing well, if his kicking game's strong, they win games. And if Penrith, say they go up against a Brisbane, right? And they just play their footy, consistent footy, beat them in the arm wrestle, no one's going to say, you could give the Clive Churchill to anyone in that team. It's going to be Nathan Cleary because he touches the ball the most and he's the most impactful player in that team. So I'm calling it at $4.50 right now. You can get Nathan Cleary Dally M.
By default, he's their
Not Dally M. Nathan Cleary, Clive Churchill medal, $4.50. You can get on it now.
$4.75.
$4.75.
If you really want value on some platforms. But really, he's their most influential player. When he touches the ball, that's when things are getting set up for them. I don't know if Luai's going to return by the grand final. I think he is. But even then, even if he does return, most of the football is going to be played through Nathan Cleary. He plays both sides of the field. Edwards plays the right, Luai left.
Yeah.
Cleary's the one that runs both sides. So he's their most important player.
Who was your player of the week?
My player of the week was Kalen Ponga. I got a bit scared there at the end. I thought it
was a concussion. I head straight to the ground. I was like, they're not even going to let him kick. They're going to rush him off the field.
I'm thinking there goes 11 days. But before that, he had a great game. I think he scored a couple tries, set up another couple.
Set up a few.
He's one of the best players in the NRL. And it's finally time people are starting to actually give him praise for how he's been playing.
Just him beating Jack Wyden, who's a solid defender. He was easily getting on his outside, throwing him away from him, setting up tries for Dom Young. Defensively, they're a bit weak. But again, that's not Kalen Ponga's fault. He's been one of the sole reasons why they've gone 10 in a row.
And he's going to be the reason they win this weekend. I don't think the Warriors will be able to contain him. And that's just, it's a sad reality that when a player is that good, you can't do anything to stop him.
You're not back in the wilds.
In New Zealand. If you were the NRL, who would you prefer to keep going? Newcastle or the Warriors?
Warriors.
You have to say the Warriors because it's not just going to be an Australian finals. If you bring New Zealand into it, you've got a big Polynesian community here in Australia as well.
Being at the Warriors game on the weekend against Penrith, there's just a Polynesian atmosphere.
But it's also just New Zealand. Like they're getting around the Wars. It's a bloody movement, almost as much as the All Blacks right now who are playing in the World Cup. Everywhere you go right now where there's New Zealand Warriors fans, it's up the Wars. How many times did we hear it on the weekend?
And every other fan base, whether you're the Bulldogs like us, their second favourite team has become the Warriors.
Yeah, you want to see them do well. Even though I'm jumping straight on that three-peat bandwagon, I'll tell you right now, and it's going to be Nathan Cleary, Clive Churchill medalist. But we'll clip that up for when he gets it. Nick, over the weekend, we saw this while we were at the UFC, but Valentine Holmes obviously was in the news because he put up a questionable Instagram story. Now, if you're Valentine Holmes in this situation, what do? How do you face the music?
I would just deny everything. I mean, this was a thing that went viral on WhatsApp.
It went around WhatsApp. I received it about 10 times. When I received it, I sent it to another 20 people straight away. Because it's not often you see a rugby league player, as much as there's been Mad Monday scandals, every single year, but he willingly put a story up of him having a beer and having some substance, I don't know what it was, in his mouth at the time. But you're right, if you're Valentine Holmes right now, deny it till you die. If there's going to be an integrity unit investigation, you know what I'm saying? That's an AI picture. And I thought it was funny and I put it on my story. You can't prove that it was real. It was Panadol in that.
I would do the Jon-Bernard. Jon-Bernard claimed a toy gun in the Instagram live. That white powder's just Panadol.
It's Panadol.
It's nothing.
It's crushed up anti-inflammatories.
I'm trying to recover.
It's been a tough season.
If he's really smart, look at the rules of the game. You can't test for illicit substances in the off-season. So even if they want to test him, hey, you can't do it. I
just book a one-way flight to maybe Bali or something and say, Asada, come test me over here. But again, it's a recreational substance, if that is it.
Allegedly.
But again, we don't condone that at all. It's probably one of the silliest things he's done. Rugby league doesn't need that, but at the end of the day, it's Mad Monday. The boys will play. And again, silly from him, but everyone just move on. No one will care about it in the next 2 weeks.
I mean, but double down. Hey, it's CGI. That's not me in the photo. I put that up, or even claim, I put that up as a joke.
Yeah, it was a joke.
I was trying to just stir the media.
Yeah.
Job well done.
Don't claim it. Deny it till you die, Valentine Holmes. But talking about the end of season, it's kind of boiled down to, we've been saying it's going to be a Brisbane Panthers grand final. We have been doing our end of season reviews. We'll continue those. Nick, what is the remaining end of season review?
Well, looking at the last two teams that got eliminated this week, the Canberra Raiders, end of season review, they get a D for me. Mm-hmm. they were one of the most disappointing teams. Yes, they made the 8, but if you actually looked at each individual game they played this season, they were never a good team. They never won a game by more than 13 points or 12 points. Every game they won was 1-12. Their for and against was abysmal compared to the rest of the top 8. They were lucky to make the 8. Ricky Stewart was claiming they should have been a top 4 side or they could have been a top 4 side. I don't know what football he's watching.
Yeah, with Jack Wyden on the way out, I agree. It's a D for me as well. I just think they need a change of pace, the Raiders. I think it's just been the same thing for the last 5 years. Ricky Stewart at the helm, and there's nothing exciting about their footy. They sometimes string a couple of good attacking plays together, but they're never a consistent footy team.
They added Michael Maguire to their coaching roster this year, but I don't think he's the answer. They're a very bland team. I think they overachieved on the weekend. I think they caught Newcastle by surprise and scared them a little bit. But overall, I agree with you guys. A D.
And it's a thing that they've done over recent years. They have a bit of a lead, and they somehow always blow their lead. They had a 10-point lead on Newcastle on the weekend, and they couldn't get it done. And that's maybe a coaching issue, or it's another thing about the players. They don't know how to retain a lead. And I know Dad's been saying it all season. They're the most average team in the comp, and they never deserve the spot in the 8.
I don't even see them making the 8 next year. Like with Jack Wyden out of the picture, they don't have a marquee player that can create something out of nothing. Jamal Fogarty, as much as I like him at 7, he needs a good spine with him.
I think he's testing his value as well on the market.
Yeah, so it's going to be very tough for Raiders fans out there. It's not looking good into the future. But then looking at the Cronulla Sharks, who also got eliminated this week, end of season report card for the Cronulla Sharks, I'm going with a D as well. It could be a C, but a D. Like with wraps on you going into this season, coming off Nico Hines being the Dally M medalist, where they finished this year, either team in that game, the Roosters or the Sharks game, either team that had lost it was going to be a disappointing end to their season because both teams should have gone much further than they have with the roster that they have. And again, it's just an inconsistent year for them. They never strung good, I'd say, momentum throughout the season. Nico Hines was off and on. Their forwards, I don't think, showed up throughout the season when they wanted to match up against decent packs. So, again, I'm going to say C.
I think losing on the weekend in the fashion that they did just puts a bitter taste in towards the end of the season. Having Tedesco go off for 10 minutes, have all these players be injured, and you still lose at
Suwali,
home.
Manu coming off with a hamstring injury, and still not getting the job done.
And then being a top 4 side last year, having pretty high expectations of your season this year, and not being able to perform to those expectations, it just shows you had a disappointing year. And any Sharks fan that says they're happy with their season, they'd be lying to themselves. So that's why it's a D.
What does Craig Fitzgibbon do next year? Does he change much?
I wouldn't do much. You got great wingers. You got Nico Hines at halfback. Maybe just sack Matt Moylan? Dad, you've said Matt Moylan can't tackle, he can't play. What would you do?
Well, I think they've told Matt Moylan to start looking for another, even though I think he's contracted for another year.
I like Trindle there. I think they're stronger with him there.
They're stronger with
But
Trindle.
maybe, yeah, I think maybe they, look, I don't know. I mean, they lost a few games by a lot of points this year. They got bashed. Mate, their centres, I mean, Ramian and Talakai, look, they're very strong centres. Defensively, they're not very smart. They get
caught out.
They get caught out quite a bit. So, and I know Talakai spent a bit of time on the bench as well this year. So, look, I'd be if I was Fitzgibbon, I'd be very disappointed. They went out the back door last year, and they
but with
Wade, home
Wade,
semi again. They lost the home semi. They lost 2 home games last year.
I know with Wade Graham on the way out, I think they'll plug their holes. I like Cam McInnes. I think he's one of their stronger players.
Brayley is my favourite player on that team. I think
100%.
he's the reason that they probably are not an F this year, considering how
But
bad
they will be a top 8 team next year. I don't think they have to change much. They obviously just need to step it up on the back end of the season. But let's go through our NRL Team of the Year. We've seen enough footy now. We're at the major semis, going into the preliminary finals in a few weeks. But our NRL Team of the Year right now, Nick, who do you have as fullback?
Fullback is Reece Walsh. I could go Kalen Ponga, but Reece Walsh had a better overall season. If you include Origin, his performance in Origin, he was the most electrifying player this year, and you can't say any other player otherwise. If he didn't get suspended or injuries as well, he'd be Dally M. So Reece Walsh, fullback of the year.
Wingers, I'm going Dominic Young and Watene Zelezniak at the New Zealand Warriors. Dominic Young is the best last tackle option in the comp. He can jump up with the best of them, and he's a great finisher. You've seen it over the last couple of weeks. The way he's able to score tries is kind of unmatched in the NRL. And then Watene Zelezniak as well. he's been one of the best try scorers in New Zealand Warriors history, the way he's finishing tries on that right side for them. So they've been the out-and-out best wingers in the comp.
Luscious mullet as well for
Yeah.
Tennis Lesniak, so he definitely makes the team of the year. Centres, I'm going with Herbie Farnworth and Stephen Crichton.
Farnworth deserved this one.
Farnworth is probably the most underrated player. Similar to how Dylan Edwards had that title, no one really gives him the praise for the work he does for Brisbane.
Well, I think the centres this year have been underwhelming. Like, Manu is known as the best centre in the comp. Again, didn't have the year that he probably wanted to at the Roosters this year.
Olam, previous.
Justin
centre of
Olam
the
has
year.
been in and out of form and dropped from Melbourne. So, again, I think Farnworth's probably been the best for Brisbane.
And Stephen Crichton has been a try-scoring machine, one of Penrith's best players, filling in everywhere, but always showing up on game day. I think he's had a couple hat-tricks this year as
Again,
well.
strong defensive centre as well. I would say again, the Bulldogs are going to push him to fullback, but centre is his position.
They might not, though. You never know. They might plug him in at centre because that's where he's strongest. Similar to how some people say Latrell's strongest at centre, but centres of the year, definitely Farnworth and Crichton. There was no other centres that competed with them.
5'8", I'm going with Jerome Luai. Again, this might be a questionable one for people because Cam Munster is right up there as well. But Jerome Luai does not get the credit he deserves. For what he does for that Penrith Panthers team and controls that left side, he's also one of the better running 5'8" in the comp. So again, I do believe that he is one of the best 5'8" with so much upside in his career. He's still a young player. He dishes it out to the media. He's one of the most entertaining players off the field. On the field, he's just as good and he deserves more credit. So Jerome Luai is my 5'8" of the year.
Penrith were without Cleary for quite a bit of time this year, and Jerome really stepped up and
Exactly why he deserves a spot.
yeah, he really took a hold of that team.
I think because the media dislikes him so much, he never gets the credit for the on-field performances. But really, if you actually just focus solely on his on-field performances, he's one of the best 5'8" in the comp.
I know the comments are going to come at that one because Cam Munster could very well be on that list. But this year, I just think Jerome Luai's just been a bit more consistent.
Okay, and at halfback, Sean Johnson. It wasn't going to be anyone else. Cherry Evans and Cleary had great seasons, but Sean Johnson had the best season of a halfback. He's completely turned around the Warriors and turned around his own career in the process as well. Coming off last year where people were calling for him to retire, he's probably going to win the Dally M this year. Halfback of the year, Sean Johnson.
Yeah, Cleary could have well been there as well. Missed some time there with injury, but again, yeah, Sean Johnson, what a homecoming for New Zealand as well. Hopefully they can go further in the finals. Front rowers for me, I'm going with Payne Haas and Adam Fanua-Blake. Payne Haas, this is an easy one. 80-minute front rower. Again, probably going to be the most and highest paid front rower in the NRL. Record-breaking deal at the Brisbane Broncos, and he deserves it. There's no player like him. Again, we're talking running meters, we're talking offloads, longevity on the field. He's Brisbane's best player and the best front rower in the comp, and Adam Fanua-Blake has been one of the standouts for New Zealand Warriors. They're playing off the back of him. He's the most damaging front rower in the comp in his short bursts. Again, I think they're the most deserving front rowers to be in the team of the year.
At hooker, I'm going with Harry Grant, and that's just by default. I don't think he had an outstanding season compared to previous seasons, but there's no other hookers in the comp that really stood out this year. Wade Egan maybe at the Warriors. Brandon Smith was disappointing. Damien Cook disappointing. I like Blake Brayley, but I think Harry Grant's stats overall just
quietly,
beat out.
Phoenix Crossland getting some praise from Newcastle.
He
greats
only had
as
a
well.
good back end of the season.
I know, but I love watching him play footy because he's having a top back end of the season. But I agree with you. Harry Grant, he's just a consistent player for Melbourne, does his job. He's a great runner of the ball out of dummy half, just plays what's in front of him. And at the end of the day, who else are you going to put there? There's not really, Brandon Smith wasn't the revelation he was supposed to be at the Roosters. He's been the most consistent hooker and he's the dummy half of the year. Let's go to second rowers. Second row of the year for me is David Fafita and Hamoli Olakau'atu. Fafita has been, I'd say, consistent for the Gold Coast Titans.
Back to his damaging best.
And it was good to see him get a run in Origin as well and play well in Origin. But Hamoli Olakau'atu is deservingly going to get a 7-year deal they're talking about at the Manly Seagulls with millions of dollars thrown at him because he's the most damaging second rower in the comp. He doesn't fear anyone in front of him. He's very strong defensively and he's a great runner of the ball, scores tries as a second rower, protects his halfbacks as well. I just think he's one of the best, not up-and-coming players anymore. I think he's one of the most feared second rowers in the NRL.
If I was to start a team, they'd be my two second rowers. They're skillful, they're damaging, and they can almost play centre. They're that quick, and sometimes when they get on the outside of their players.
Lock of the year?
Lock of the year, I'm going with Pat Carrigan. He'd be the captain of the team as well. He's the epitome of a captain of an NRL side. He doesn't put a foot wrong. He's always, putting the right foot forward for the Brisbane Broncos. He makes good runs. He makes his tackles. There's not much more you could ask of Pat Carrigan. He had a great Origin series as well, and I'm expecting him to come back in this finals and actually lead the Broncos to the grand final.
Brisbane have locked him up for a long-term deal for a reason because he's the best lock in the game. You've seen him mic'd up as well. He doesn't stop
leader.
talking.
He's a leader.
Yeah, he's a true leader, and I think that's what Brisbane needs. Yes, they have Reece Walsh, and he's been unbelievable for him, but they're playing off the back of their forwards like Payne Haas and their leader in Pat Carrigan. He's the best lock in the game.
You got to put most of the leadership qualities back down to Pat Carrigan. The reason they're going so well this year is because they probably look up to him and Adam Reynolds.
And look what happens when he comes back into the team. They obviously didn't field the best team 2 weeks ago when they played the Melbourne Storm. Him and Reynolds come back into the team, and they put a number on Melbourne. It was almost tough to watch.
It was clinical.
Yeah. Well, let's go to our go-to segment that we've been trialling over the last few weeks. It's been banging across the socials. Who's in the wrong? We're going to break these up into probably individual videos, but who was in the wrong this week, Nick? We've got Craig Bellamy playing Ryan Pappenhausen in the middle, or Nelson Asafa-Solomona kamikazing himself into Ryan Pappenhausen's ankle. Look, it was a bit of friendly fire. You don't want to see it, but who's in the wrong here?
This is an extremely tough one because it is a catastrophic injury.
And I just want to say, thank God Ryan Pappenhausen is all right. We were praying for him. It's best case scenario. What's come out of that injury is only going to do about 3 months recovery.
My mindset goes straight to Craig Bellamy because why is someone that's 65 kilos playing in the middle? But then you go, okay, Nelson Asafa-Solomona, he didn't mean it, so it can't be his fault. And Craig Bellamy, you can't anticipate these things. So I'm saying no one's in the wrong because it's a freak accident. You can never anticipate these type of injuries. And Asafa-Solomona didn't mean to do that.
But these things happen in the middle, whether it's a hip drop tackle, whether it's a cannonball, and a friendly fire from Nelson Asafa-Solomona. You don't play someone like Kalen Ponga in the middle. Sorry, not Kalen Ponga. You don't play someone like Pappenhausen in the middle. He's 80 kilos max. He's a fullback, winger, centre. Okay, but again, I'd say keep him out of the defensive line. He can't play anywhere other than fullback. That's where he's at his best. Would you play Pappenhausen in the middle?
I think Bellamy was desperate at that point. They were shocking on the weekend, Melbourne. I just think he was trying to look for a spark, throw him in the middle, and it ended up being a really costly decision. So,
But even the idea of playing someone as a fullback at lock, do you see any benefit?
no.
Nah. They did it with Kalen Ponga once in Queensland Origin, and it worked out for them. But again, Kalen Ponga's, I think, got a bit more of a solid build about him than Pappenhausen. You know what I mean? They're two kind of different players. Pappenhausen's got the same build as like a Sam Walker, you know, a Brett Hodgson style fullback, those skinny style fullbacks, because they got pace and they can burn anyone. So again, I'm going to say Bellamy there, but again, freak accident, anything can happen on the field. What about this one? Who's in the wrong? Tyson Gamble or Jack Wyden biting Tyson Gamble?
Who's in the wrong? Jack Wyden for biting Tyson Gamble or Tyson Gamble for suffocating Jack Wyden?
I mean, he showed the bite marks on camera. He clearly got bitten. Maybe you don't have your arm around too closely near the mouth area. You're going to get, these things happen. Maybe his forearm went straight into the teeth. I can't tell these things. He's not going to show up at the judiciary apparently and go on the offense and say Jack Wyden bit me. His season's over. He doesn't need any more, scrutiny under that. But you don't bite in this game. I mean, James Graham allegedly did it at one point. Mike Tyson was the OG at biting. No one wants to see biting. I'm going to say Jack Wyden's in the wrong.
I think this is a Jack Wyden easy one. The bite marks are pretty solid evidence.
But in saying that, Nicholas, I mean, like, there's a lot of, when you're making a tackle, there's a lot of force. And, I mean, Gamble could have been put,
Yeah, don't strangle someone around the mouth.
Yeah, he's trying to choke him, and so he's putting upward pressure.
That's why the only saving grace for Jack Wyden is that he didn't really go and open his mouth and turn his head.
There was no actual biting action. I think when
didn't-
James Graham bit, you could see like a biting action.
He turned his head and actually was trying to munch him.
Okay.
But Jack Wyden, he just was there. His arm was there.
If you open your mouth and you bite down, you're in the wrong.
I'm just saying, because of the bite marks, I'm on the side of Tyson Gamble. Jack Wyden's in the wrong.
Okay, what about who's in the wrong here? The Penrith Panthers putting up a video package saying up the pars, making fun of the up the wars after they put a number on him at the Panthers Stadium, or the CEO of the Panthers apologising to the Warriors for the up the pars post and taking down the up the pars post. Why the hell would you do that?
This is an easy one. The CEO is definitely in the wrong. There's nothing wrong with boasting about a victory and mocking the other team. And you know what? Up the Pars was a great little song.
Jerome Luai initially put out the story, Up the Pars, and it was hilarious. They bashed him. He's having a go at the fans. We'd like to see some playful characters in the NRL. I don't see any harm in it. It's a bit of fun. The Penrith Panthers have that kind of characteristic about them that they're the most hated team and they're the most arrogant team, but they back it up by winning and they play into it. So Up the Pars is playing into it. Hate us all you want, we're winning. And I like how they play into it. So I don't understand.
Yeah,
was it rude? Was it in bad taste? No, it doesn't deserve an apology and taking down the post.
It's a reflection of the world we live in today. We're too politically correct. I think that's a bit of fun, bit of banter between teams. You want to see that.
That's why. What did the CEO expect was going to happen of this? The video's still out there. You can go find it if you want.
But who's the flogs calling for it to be taken down and saying apologise for this right now because Up the Was is our thing and you can't say Up the Pars. It's just soft.
You can't mock us. You're that soft as a society. This PC version of society has become that weak.
I'm going to say the Panthers in the wrong for taking it down. That's a pussy move. You stand by that and as a CEO say, no, this is our club and we're mucking around. The social team's having a bit of fun. It's Up the Pars.
Why ruin the fun? That's all I'm saying. Why ruin the fun?
Well, let's move on to our player head-to-heads. We do these each week. You can catch them on Picklebet socials and at JBK Show over on YouTube. But, Nick, this week we're going with Darren, is it Wateni Zalesniak?
Dallin Wateni
I was
Zalesniak.
going to butcher that pronunciation. Wateni Zalesniak or Dominic Young, who has been the better player this season?
By the stats, Dom Young, 25 games. Wateni Zalesniak, only 18 games. Dom Young has scored 24 tries, 21 tries for Wateni Zalesniak.
Mm-hmm.
Both have Wateni Zalesniak has 3 try assists, 5 try assists for Dom Young. Both average 150 run meters per game.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing, though, Dom Young has 43 errors this year. Wateni Zalesniak only 28.
He also has a few more games on him this year, 25 to 18 games.
15 more errors. That's quite a
It's
few.
quite a bit, I know, but I've got to go with Dom Young. Not that, look, Wateni Zalesniak's been great, but I just think there's a lot more upside to Dom Young. He's a bit younger. He's lightning quick. Roger Fabrice says he's up there with the top 3.
He's a better broken field runner, Dom Young, than...
Yeah.
Telly Zalesniak is, obviously a finisher, great finisher. And so is
Who
Dom
has
Young,
the better carry coming out of their half? I'm going to go with Dom Young.
I'd say Zalesniak has the better carry. Zalesniak has the better carry and he's probably the better finisher.
No, look, mate, Dom Young is hard to tackle, man. The guy is 6 foot
okay.
something. And like I said, he's one of the fastest in the comp. He's top 3 fastest players in the comp. When you have the running speed of a Brian To'o and you're that big, you're the best last tackle option in the comp as well, mind you. So I've got to go with Dom Young.
I'd say on face value, looking at them, you would say Dom Young's the better player and the better winger. But looking at the stats, they're pretty similar. I'd say Wateni Zalesniak's got a better try scoring rate as well. So as a finisher, he's definitely better. And average run meters, coming out of their half, they're making the same amount of yardage.
I don't know. Dom Young's done some unbelievable things. Like you saw that game, even against St. George, when he was getting dragged into the sideline, the ability to put that ball down. Wateni Zalesniak does exactly the same thing for his team. But I just think there's way more upside. If I had to pick one player that I was, if I'm the Sydney Roosters, for example, and you give me those 2 players, I'm taking Dominic Young. And they have.
A question. Anytime try scorer this weekend, Knights versus Warriors, who are you taking?
I take both of them. I actually take both of them. They both will score tries. And it's the same when you have to pick between Sione Katoa or Ronaldo Mulatalo. They're both great finishers. They're both great carrying the ball out of their halves. These guys are pretty similar players, but I think Dom Young on pace, on finishing and just carry out of their half, I'm going Dom Young.
The deciding factor for me is who would I rather sign for the Bulldogs, and that'd be Dom Young. Dom Young wins here.
Well, the Lenny was Wateni Zalesniak has played for the Bulldogs. He was a disaster there. So
but he played fullback though, not on the wing.
And that's at the Bulldogs as well. Can you blame him? But hey, we bumped into Cam Serralde. He was having a bit of a chat with Api Coruscant over the weekend at the UFC.
We trust in Cam.
We love Cam. He's a gentleman of a bloke, and we trust him next season. But let's move into our top 5. This week, top 5 is top 5 worst sporting injuries of all time. Starting with number 5 is the Spider, Anderson Silva. Now, he's known as one of the greatest UFC fighters of all time, but he's also known for one of the most horrific injuries in the UFC of all time. Again, he goes for a leg kick, gets checked, and his leg wraps around this check like he's Elastigirl. It was bloody hard to watch. I can't even watch it when I look back at the footage. He goes back to step on it as well, immediately drops to the ground. You could hear Joe Rogan screaming, going, oh my God, this is disgusting. One of the worst injuries of all time. But he came back from it. I don't know if he was the same fighter coming back, but again, very hard to watch.
For me, this is the OG compound fracture. Anytime I think of someone breaking their leg, my mind instantly goes to Anderson Silva. But at number 4, I'm going with Sid Vicious. On an episode of WCW Nitro, he jumps off the top rope in a usual routine move, lands awkwardly on his left leg, and it just collapses and snaps in half. It's one of the most gruesome things to look at. But one of the best things is He lands on his leg, falls back down onto his back, and his mind instantly goes to, how am I going to finish the match? What a gladiator, what a warrior.
Yeah, Psycho Sid. One of the most gruesome injuries in WWE, and we view WWE as a sport. Bloody hard to watch. Again, he's not a high flyer, Sid Vicious. Probably shouldn't be going up to the top rope. And he did and paid for it. You know, high risk, high reward. They're high risk maneuvers.
He had his whole 150 kilo frame landing on that left leg.
Number 3, we're going with Andrew Bogut snapping his elbow on a fast break to the dunk, Nick. We've spoken to Andrew Bogut about this before. Again, we were saying, was he going for a foul? Was he trying to hang on to the basket for long? But his legs get taken out from underneath him, and he lands awkwardly trying to brace himself back, snaps his elbow. He was out for an extended period of time here when he was, up and coming, going number 1 drafted in the NBA. Set him back a little bit there, but he goes on to have a great career at the Golden State Warriors as well. Wins a championship over there, but this injury was gruesome.
What is most gruesome about this one? The previous injuries, they land on it and they're in a state of shock. He lands and breaks his arm, and he's yelling at the top of his voice out in pain. So he felt the full force of this injury, which is why it's the worst.
I'm blaming Amari Stoudemire for this. I reckon he took his legs out while he was up there on that fast break dunk. Landed very awkwardly on his elbow and snaps it. Very hard to watch.
At number 2, I'm going with Joe Theismann in the NFL. Washington Redskins quarterback back in the 1980s. One of the greatest. Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence Taylor, the greatest defensive player of all time, comes around on the left side, lands on his back. His knee goes right into the back of his ankle and snaps it right in half. This changed the game of the NFL, as the blind side has made known. You need to protect your quarterback, because if you don't, you're going to snap his leg in half.
Yeah,
Ended his career.
And it ended his career as well. So this is why most gruesome, because he didn't come back from this.
And it's in the opening scene of The Blind Side for a reason. It's why it's called The Blind Side, because you need a Michael Orr to protect your quarterback from snapping your bloody leg in half.
Yep.
And it is a gruesome injury. I can't really watch it. I get a bit queasy around these ones. But number 1 is Paul George. In the NBA, he's going after James Harden for a chase down block, right? Lands very awkwardly on the base of the backboard, or on the base of the basket. And it probably shouldn't have been that close. I think regulation backboards, it shouldn't be that close. But the way he lands is very awkwardly. It's a freak accident, and actually snaps his fibula inwards. It concaves in. It's one of the most gruesome sporting injuries of all time. Now, if he didn't have the best doctors in the world, I don't know how he actually came back from this. He comes back a year later and still plays consistent basketball, but who knows what could have happened if Paul George didn't have this injury. But one of the worst compound fractures of all time.
For me, this is easily the most gruesome compound fracture in a game that meant nothing as well. Just to go up for a small block, and then the way he lands, his foot just touches the back of the backboard post and just falls in half. It's so ugly to look at. I'm a bit ashamed that I enjoy watching it.
Everyone's reaction in basketball at that time, even the players on the field were going, oh my God, this is disgusting. They could have just all walked off the field at the time. They could have just walked off the court. They didn't want to play. Everyone was in shock. Get the green whistle in his mouth straight away. They got him off and he came back. But that is our top 5 worst sporting injuries of all time. Make sure you check out our top 5s at Picklebet on social media and at the JBK Show on YouTube. But Nick, we were at the Collingwood versus Demons game over the weekend in Melbourne. The AFL Finals is picking up. Collingwood have secured a preliminary final spot. What's your preview for the AFL Finals this week?
Well, Collingwood with the weekend off, as do the Brisbane Lions. It's now Carlton versus the Demons. And in that game, I'm rocking with the Demons. I don't think Carlton have enough to get that far.
You really hate the Carlton fans.
I don't hate the Carlton fans. They hate me. But Melbourne Demons are the better team. They'll go through. The other game, Port Adelaide versus GWS, it doesn't really matter because they're versing Collingwood the week after, and neither of them can beat Collingwood. So it doesn't really matter. Collingwood, though, it's our year, so just watch them. If you're an AFL fan, just watch Collingwood games. But more interestingly about the AFL on the weekend, we like to do this a lot, AFL versus NRL. AFL versus NRL week 1 of the finals, who had a more successful week? Total crowd numbers for the AFL on the weekend, 289,000 across 4 games. The NRL, 113,000. So a very big margin in terms of crowd size.
It doesn't really help when, Cronulla Sharks can only fit 12,000
people.
That's embarrassing.
I agree. But, if you take that Cronulla game to an Accor, are they getting 30, 40,000? Maybe. I mean, Roosters fans don't travel all that often.
But they could have done it at Allianz.
Even if
you don't want to do it at Allianz. It's a Roosters home game. Like the Cronulla, they shouldn't have played it at Shark Park. It's very stupid. You're limiting the amount of people that can enjoy a finals game in person. But at the end of the day, I think rugby league fans just have to acknowledge that AFL is the most popular sport in the country. They prove it in attendance. They prove it in TV ratings like they have this week and TV numbers. And ultimately, that's why they have the bigger broadcasting deal. They have, I think they make almost $150 million more a year in broadcasting rights, right? And you can't refute that fact.
Well, that's why. Usually the case is AFL always trumps NRL in terms of crowd numbers. But this week as well, the NRL lost in TV ratings. Friday night, TV ratings across Channel 7, Channel 9. The Carlton versus Sydney Swans game recorded 784,000 concurrent viewers.
The Storm versus Broncos game, 580,000 viewers.
So usually in where the NRL says we beat the AFL, which is TV ratings, they even lost out on that this week. So really, as the NRL, as a health check, you're nowhere near the success of the AFL. And that's a harsh reality that NRL fans have to face, that you're not as popular as the AFL.
I had both games. I was watching both games at once. And honestly, watching the Brisbane Broncos Melbourne Storm game nearly put me to sleep. It was nice being able to, I mean, that game between Carlton and Sydney. Sydney stayed in the game, made it exciting all the way to the very end, you know what I mean? And that's what viewers want. Viewers at the end of the day want competition. They don't want one team
blowing out the other.
And that's what happened with that. Melbourne never looked like winning that game on Friday
you can't
night.
really say
even the Collingwood game, you had to watch it right till the end because the Demons brought it back into that fourth quarter. But I just have to say that it is clear more than ever now, both in TV ratings and in crowd attendance, the AFL win the finals week 1.
But it's also the crowd attendance. They had 180,000 more people at the games. Yes, they played the games at the MCG, but they still filled the stadiums to capacity for 2 games.
But even
2 games, 90,000+ people.
Even if the Sharks moved it to an Accor stadium, the AFL are still winning in crowd attendance.
Oh, 100%.
It's just that Melbourne fans are a different breed to Sydney.
They like their footy more.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. And it's a more national game. So people from Perth are probably going to be tuning in to watch the AFL. They're not going to be tuning in to watch the NRL.
Well, you look at the makeup of the teams in the top 8. You've got a team from Adelaide. You've got obviously there wasn't a team from Perth this year. You've got a team from Brisbane. You've got a team from Sydney. You had 2 teams from Sydney. So both GWS.
But where NRL fans say it's international.
Yeah. So are the NRL affected by having the New Zealand Warriors? I don't know. I mean, AFL is solely played in Australia. You know what I mean? So there's that aspect as well. But I just think based on the broadcast deals and, crowd attendance and TV ratings, AFL is winning this final series and they're going to win out the year. I think that if we're playing the game of competition.
The crowd attendance this year for the AFL was their highest ever. So really, they're at their most successful ever then. If in 2023, 289,000 is their highest crowd attendance for the first week of the finals ever.
Well, let's look ahead to the upcoming NRL Finals matches. Nicholas, I think we can call it right now. You have one tipping this year. We're going to tip it out to the rest of the season. But I'm going to have to get myself a 40-year-old virgin wax, which is what we said we were going to do at the start of the year. We will be making some content out of it. But who are our tips for this weekend? What's game 1 this week? Is Friday night. Who we got? I
got Melbourne. Roosters have got a lot of players out this week.
So Storm versus Roosters, you're taking Melbourne?
Yeah, I think this is a collective Melbourne from everyone.
Melbourne too,
it's
Melbourne never played 2 bad games in a row. Like they played really poorly last week. Munster was missing. Jerome Hughes went missing.
It's just, but what team are the Roosters going to field? Again, with no Manu, not likely to play this week.
Okay, but the other question, I'm going with Melbourne as well just because of the injuries.
Coach is out for Melbourne.
Yeah.
But do either of these teams beat Penrith the week after?
No.
Or even have a chance of beating them?
They're playing for a loss in the preliminary final.
Who has a better chance of beating the Penrith
Melbourne
Panthers?
does.
Melbourne.
does.
So I'd like to see Melbourne come out of this.
Just to give them a better chance at winning, or at least a
And
competition.
again, I'd say the Roosters don't even deserve to come this far. Like, for them to even beat Cronulla the way that they did, I couldn't see it happening. But and good on them, they've done what they've done, and we're big fans of Sam Walker. James Tedesco stepped up as well. Apparently he was pacing up and down while he was off for 10 minutes. He wanted to be out there with his team, but they're not going to go as far as this week. And Melbourne are the only team that could maybe beat Penrith on their day, and that's a stretch in and of itself. So I'm going with Melbourne there as well. Who do we got next?
Saturday night, Dad, what game?
Warriors Knights.
Now, we're going to be there in New Zealand. We want to see the Wales fans up close and personal. It is in New Zealand. The Newcastle Knights have gone 10 in a row. Can they make it 11? I'm going to say yes, they can. I don't think the Warriors can do it. They've gone too far. Dad, you said at the top of the show, they have overachieved. Sean Johnson coming back into the team is going to be a boost. But
there's still a question mark about whether he'll play.
Really?
Yeah.
Jeez.
I just don't. I think the Newcastle, as much as they leak points on the back end of the games, they're going to show up. The only question mark is it's in New Zealand, but I'm going to back Kalen Ponga and the Knights.
Who do I want to win? I want the Warriors to win because I like the fanfare of it. But who do I think will win? It's the Knights. They're the better attacking team. Both teams I don't think can defend well. So I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. Take the overs.
Same question. Which team is going to go on to beat Brisbane? Which team can beat Brisbane after this
Newcastle. Newcastle can beat them if they somehow defend because they can score tries against Brisbane.
Well, they nearly beat them during the
regular
season.
season.
Yeah, the regular
so there you go.
season,
I
right?
think Kalen Ponga has a chance to take over a game. That's the only reason you could see Newcastle winning. So Newcastle Knights are going to get it done this week.
Well, that's our tips for the NRL this week. Again, we're wrapping up the season. Preliminary finals the following week. Again, we're tipping a Brisbane-Penrith grand final. I don't see it being anyone outside of those two teams. But, Nick, EPL is off this week. International break. It'll be a nice return this week. We're going to be catching up with someone familiar on the back end to catch some big games of the EPL this week. But we also had some international news. Do you want to kick this off?
Well, international news. A young lady, Mish Mins, known as Ronaldo. Ronaldo made her debut for South Africa under 21s.
Now, she has a striking resemblance to one of the great Brazilian players, Ronaldinho. Now, some people have put two and two together on the internet, okay, saying that she does look extremely similar to Ronaldinho. And there was a friendly game played in 2007 where Ronaldinho was in South Africa and him and some teammates went out and about and had a little bit of fun. Now, if there's anyone that's going to have a love child in South Africa, it's going to be Ronaldinho because he's had some past of tax evasion, has some past of partying, having a good time, showing up to training intoxicated. Looking at this woman, it's flat out Ronaldinho. Put a picture up side by side against each other. It's a one of one. Now, I need a hair sample. I need let's put him in a Maury Povich, is he the father or not? But let's see how she plays. She's very young, under 21s Brazilian, under 21 South African team. But if she's a freak player, I could guarantee it's Ronaldinho's daughter.
Let's just look at the facts. She's 16 years old, raised by a single mother. Ronaldinho did visit South Africa in 2007 and was reported to have a bit of fun with the locals. I mean, that's as much evidence as I need.
I could probably guarantee you that there's probably 9 to 10 love childs of Ronaldinho that are going to be greats of the game in the near future, whether it's his son already playing for Barcelona or daughters playing for South Africa. And I'm going to say it right now, that's his daughter.
What's the old saying? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. That's a one-to-one resemblance.
Is she a striker?
She may as well be.
Even if she's a midfielder, I bet you she could shoot him.
There's no way by any mutation someone can look that much alike to Ronaldinho and not be a father-daughter relationship.
Well, again, the way you could tell how she plays on the field, if she can't play and she's having air swings at goal, it's not his daughter. Maybe it's just a coincidence. But let's get him on Maury Povich. Ronaldinho needs to come out and face these allegations because why wasn't he present in this young daughter's life? Why was she raised by a single mum? If he's got money, I don't know if he blew it all over his career and all the tax evasion dramas that he had, but
he might be in jail. I'm not sure.
Maybe come back out of the woodworks now and come into her life now that she's seeing some success with the South African team.
Do some dribble activities with that. We want to see it.
Now the US Open was taken by Novak Djokovic. He came out winning his 24th Grand Slam. Shout out to Kobe. But the funny coincidence in this, Nick, was that he was given the Moderna shot of the tournament. Now, this is a player that refused any vaccines. Moderna was the major sponsor of the US Open this tournament. The irony of having Bill Gates in the stands having to watch Novak Djokovic win his Grand Slam and then get the Moderna shot of the tournament. Surely someone's playing a joke on the broadcasters.
Well, Novak Djokovic winning the shot of the day, Moderna shot of the day, is the most ironic thing of all time. Moderna had a shocking tournament. They had Aaron Rodgers come into the stands, cross out Moderna on the thing, and now the anti-vaxxer, the biggest anti-vaxxer in the world, Novak Djokovic, win your greatest prize, Moderna shot of the day. I think this is just the most ironic thing ever, and you can't not laugh at it.
Is it redemption for Novak Djokovic? He stood his ground. He's winning Grand Slams now. No one's questioning, he looks like he's a bloody pillar of health. Is it redemption, and does he win one more and become the greatest of all time?
Who knows how many more he can win? He's already the greatest of all time, and it's peak humiliation.
But I'm saying by the numbers. By the numbers, he wins one more. Is it unquestionable he's a GOAT?
Yeah, no one can catch 25. And he's just, the way he's feeling. There's peak humiliation for Moderna because the person that's supposed to be the poster boy of the opposite of your business is winning Grand Slams and, winning your awards.
Because by the looks of it, he's allowed in Australia now. There was never a 3-year ban given to him, like they said they were going to give to him. He wins the Australian Open next year. I mean, unless it's like an Alcaraz again.
The thing is, it's Alcaraz needs to improve his fitness, is what a lot of pundits have been saying. He can't keep up and play as many tournaments as
Yeah, but I'm
Novak
saying,
has.
he can beat him like we saw at Wimbledon.
Yeah.
And there's players like the Daniil Medvedev who could
On
show
their
up
day.
on their day, can beat him. But again, I don't see anyone at the next Oz Open, for
He's at
example.
the peak of his powers still. Like even
Well,
at,
you think
at
30
the ripe age of 30, 34?
35.
35,
35 years old to win 3 out of 4 Grand Slams this year. This is stuff he did, 5-6 years ago. So if you're that good at this age,
And again, I think Nadal's gearing himself up for one last tour, maybe one last hurrah at a French Open or on clay again, or Roland Garros. But again, I don't see him being better than Novak Djokovic, who's playing consistent tennis.
well, okay, staying in America, the USA just lost in the FIBA Basketball World Cup.
They were embarrassing.
No one ever expected them to win because they put their C team in. And now the USA have been copping a lot of shit on Twitter, a lot of shit on the internet, saying the world of basketball is no longer about the US.
Well, you had the sprinter come out as well and say, world champions of what?
Noah Lyles came out and called
Yeah.
all these basketball players out. And I think this has geared up a bit of fire for the NBA players. American NBA players are now looking to the Paris 2024 Olympics, and they've set their sights on gold.
Well, LeBron James has come out and looks to be, assembling the Avengers, Samuel L. Jackson style, and he's committed, allegedly committed to the Olympics. Steph Curry has come out and Kevin Durant. Also, they've thrown Draymond Green in there, which I think probably shouldn't even make it.
Well, the suspected lineups now, with LeBron James allegedly committing, he's bringing along Steph Curry with him. Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, Devin Booker. He's bringing in the Avengers to get gold next year. And really, there's no team in the world that should be able to stop them.
If they field a team like, an NBA All-Star team, they win gold, and I think they show that they are world champions. Anyone in the NBA, the best NBA All-Star team that you could assemble of USA athletes would be world
How would you
champions.
compare that to the dream team of 92? With,
It wouldn't keep up with the dream team because
Jordan.
there's not as many star players, but they'd be pretty close. LeBron, Steph Curry, and Durant.
And aging LeBron. If it's LeBron 5
Doesn't
to
matter.
10 years ago, then there's a conversation. But again, I'd say the USA players at their best at the Olympics, you pick the best team, they win the
I
Olympics.
think they need to do this though because similar to the Redeem team in the 08 Olympics, people are questioning the US's dominance in basketball. I'm not because I know that they're the best and I'll acknowledge them as the best. But people need to be put back in their place and realize African Americans are the best at basketball and the USA has the most African Americans.
We spoke about injuries in our top 5, some of the most gruesome injuries of all time. This one is a sour one because right before the show, we were watching the New York Jets playing the Buffalo Bills, and they packed MetLife Stadium out. This game sold more tickets than the Super Bowl. Okay, New York fans getting up for Aaron Rodgers, finally, becoming a New York Jet. They're going to see some success this year. Within the first 5 minutes, it's reported he's torn his Achilles. Now, this is shattering. The coach came out after the game and said, it's not looking good. Scans may confirm that he's tore his Achilles. It could be an ankle injury. He limped off the field. He was carted to the back. He's got to get scans done. He walked away in a boot. Nick, if Aaron Rodgers has torn his Achilles, is this his career over?
It's definitely not career over. I mean, it's definitely a hard injury to come back
season
from.
ending.
It's season ending. It's a 6 to 9 month injury.
He's a player that could come back. He's not really reliant upon explosiveness, so he doesn't need that explosiveness.
He's a sit in the pocket.
You could hope for probably a partial tear of the Achilles. If it's
Yeah.
a full rupture of the Achilles, you're right.
But he could play in the pocket,
Maybe.
just be a throwing quarterback and still be a great top 10 quarterback.
Looking at the vision, it does look like there was some pop as he leant back on his leg. It didn't look good, and I'm hoping for the best because look, the amount of picks that New York Jets gave up for him. They signed him for 2 years to get. If they have to lose him for a year, it's a big loss. Now they still won the game. It went into overtime and they won the game by a touchdown, but it does not look good for their season.
Well, the thing is, the worst part of it is, the New York Jets are known as the most miserable fan base in the NFL.
Is New York sports cursed?
It looks like it because they have all off-season built up. Aaron Rodgers has finally come to save New York football. The Jets are finally going to have a good season. They haven't made the playoffs since 2010. And in the first 5 minutes, your best player, the biggest off-season signing of the last 10 years, gets injured in the first 5
I know
minutes.
it's extremely unlucky, but the Green
Didn't
Bay,
help
are
too.
the Green Bay Packers laughing?
It didn't help either. The New York Giants got smashed by the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah,
Like, it was a terrible
everyone-
day for New York.
Everyone was saying that New York Giants had the worst start to the NFL season, and then first 5 minutes into the game, the Jets go, hold my beer. Because he just
And you know what, like, you know, Dad's wearing the Aaron Rodgers jersey. We're planning to bring out the jersey and say, you know, Green Bay no more. He's at New York Jets, had a great game. But instead, we're talking about how he's injured, and you know, I'm miserable. I'm not conceding.
I feel sorry for him.
I'm not conceding. I'm saying it hasn't been confirmed as Achilles yet, and I'm praying and I'm holding out hope.
Well, we'll see what the scans say tomorrow, but it will definitely be reported on straight away. It'll be very unlucky for New York fans. But that brings us to an end of prime time. We'll be on again next week reviewing NRL and AFL Finals. Make sure you stay tuned because we'll be on the ground in New Zealand this week. And that is all for us at Primetime today. Make sure you stay tuned on our socials, and back to you in the studio.